Could you imagine living in one bedroom with 7 other people for 2 years at a time? Well, that's what Anne Frank did her entire life for 2 years. I chose to talk about her because her life in that era of time always caught my attention. I did extensive research through the internet and read her diary myself, and the main points I'd like to hit is how her life was before the Holocaust, what made them flee, and the life they lived in the annex. This diary has been read all over the world thousands and thousands of times. She was born June 12th of 1926 in Frankfurt, Germany. She lived with her older sister Margaret, her dad Otto, and her mother Edith. In 1933, Nazis seized power and the family fled to Amsterdam, where they built the family business, and the annex was built behind the business. Anne Frank made herself right at home in Amsterdam. She learned the Dutch language and she went to a Dutch public school. But the Nazis invaded Poland September of 1939, and the start of the Second World War had begun, and the Jews were no longer allowed to visit non-Jewish businesses. They were no longer own businesses. The start of extermination and concentration camps had begun. Now that we know how her life was before the Holocaust, now we know why they ran from it. In July of 1942, Margaret got orders to report to a work camp in Germany, and the family went into hiding the next day in the annex behind Otto's business. And they did what they had to stay together, but they left evidence behind, making the Nazis think they had fled to Switzerland. After being in hiding for about a week, Otto's associate and his family came to live with them, and later on came another Jewish man. And Anne talks in her diary often about how cramped it got and how stressed things became. Now to understand how cramped it was for the Franks and the other people, life was not easy. It was 8 people to 1 bedroom. Anne talks about how you basically keep your mouth shut to get along, the constant stress of having to be quiet during the day, and with the businesses going on underneath, they couldn't talk, and the constant fear of being found. All 8 people depended on people on the outside to bring them food and to bring clothes and other necessities. The people who helped were colleagues of Otto and kept them informed on the war and outside life. Anne often wrote about the struggles that were in the annex, how she felt lonely and frustrated a lot of the time, along with dealing with typical teenage issues. She resented her sister, thinking she too was in love with the associate's son, his name was Peter, who lived with them. And she also showed a lot of maturity within her writing. Anne wrote about how she coped with the bombs going off around them, and she gave her opinion on how humanity was going downhill and how she didn't know how they were going to come back from it. She tried to stay focused on her identity and what she wanted to do after the war. And that's how the Franks lived for 2 years. Now, I got this information from history.com and the Anne Frank house and the diary itself. And I have told you how hard of a life she lived at such a young age and how scary of an era it was, especially if you were Jewish. Anne Frank's story has taught so many about an era that was a turning point in our history. But eventually the annex was found and all 8 were sent to camps, and the only survivor of the Holocaust from that family was Otto, her father, who lived to be 91, and after the war pursued Anne's dream and published her diary after the war that is now known all over the world.